Hey everyone, Blickholson here. Today I want to talk about the game Soma once more. I know, I already made a video about the game, but that was more of a look at one of the many questions that the game makes you think of when you play the story. However, in today's video, I want to talk about the Soma story itself and why it works so well. And also why the gameplay doesn't really work so well, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So, let's get started. Also, I know the game is almost a decade old, but for those who haven't played it yet, well, first, I really think you should play it. It's a really good game. And just be warned, there are spoilers ahead.
Are you okay, Simon? I think you're bleeding.
Oh, that's nothing. It's just my brain can't stop bleeding from the accident.
Here, take this.
No, that's for later, for the scan.
It's green.
Ashley, I need to tell you something.
Simon, please don't make this weird.
No, it's not like that. Why now?
Who's David Munchie?
Why is there never enough time?
For what?
Christ.
We first see our protagonist, Simon, in a cutscene where it shows him and his girlfriend, Ashley, in a car accident. And then Simon wakes up to a phone ringing. He answers it and talks to David Munchie, and before you're allowed to walk around the environment. And after your phone call, you're allowed to take time to look around his apartment, and you will notice that it's in a very messy state. And you notice how Simon doesn't appear to be taking care of himself, which would very much make sense after a terrible event like that has occurred. So it's nothing too out of the ordinary. And after some time, he finds a tracer fluid, he drinks it, and he grabs his keys and heads out to go see Mr. Munchie. After a quick trip on the subway and a walk through the office, Simon finds himself in a room with David Munchie, with a lot of technology around him and a big seat in the middle. Simon talks to Mr. Munchie. He hasn't reached the title just yet. And Mr. Munchie explains to Simon that he's actually helping him and his colleague with their thesis work. They basically want to take brain scans, and they want to take the scan of a brain and pump different kinds of scenarios into it, so that way they can try to find a solution without actually messing with the real human brain. Earlier, Simon told him that he took the tracer fluids, so then Mr. Munchie asked Simon to sit down. When Simon does, a helmet thing-ish goes over his head, and Mr. Munchie verifies some things with Simon, where he tells him that it's just a scan. It will not hurt at all. And after the screen flickers for a little bit, a bright light takes over, and then suddenly, darkness. To make one thing clear, at this point in the game, this is considered Simon 2. And until we get to another point where I need to say this again, just assume every time I say Simon, I'm talking about Simon 2. Simon tries to look around, but the second the helmet comes off, it's apparent he's not in the same place anymore. And once he turns on the lights, he notices that he's in a completely different location. Simon breaks out using a window and walks around to see the building abandoned, only seeing broken things everywhere and a strange black substance on things. He's also confused on why he can hear the machines and even seem to hear their last thoughts, it appears, just by touching them, almost like he is connected to them.
I'm gonna shut you down now, okay? Yeah, you're creepy as hell, so I'm gonna shut you down.
As Simon walks around a little more, he comes across another room with a door lock. But when he approaches it, he hears a creature? And after some time, it appears to go away, and when he opens the door, he finds a very messed up room, but on the table, he finds a special tool called the Omni Tool. Simon takes the Omni Tool back to the room where he woke up to update the security cipher that he saw earlier, essentially allowing him to explore more of where he is, so he can figure out why he was there, how he got there, and who might also be there with him. However, after opening the door to the next area, Simon discovers that he's not only in a strange facility, but the facility is also underwater. He moves forward and finds himself in a locked room. He tries to touch the button to open the hatch, but gets electrocuted. After looking, he finds a strange hole of sorts and simply pokes it, and then he discovers that, and I quote, "It doesn't hurt anymore." When he did that, the button became unelectrocuted, I guess. So he went in and climbed into the hatch to crawl around. Simon makes his way through the vent into the main room, where he sees a robot on the floor connected to two tentacles that themselves are connected to the console. Simon can't seem to really talk to the robot, and when he does eventually rip off the tentacles, the robot starts saying things, and when he takes off the second one, it essentially starts to shut down. But as soon as that happens, Simon is able to turn on the power to the power plant, and when he hears a nearby monitor turn on, he listens, and this is where we meet Catherine.
Someplace dealing with electrical power. I'm not sure if it's a plant or a transformer.
Yeah, you're probably in a thermal plant somewhere. You want to go upstairs to the comm center. It's the room with the dome ceiling.
Hey, look, this place is not... There's something seriously wrong here. Hello?
I'm sorry I didn't catch that. We lost another relay. Listen, head for the comm center upstairs. I'll wait here.
After Simon and Catherine speak, he is told to find a room with a domed ceiling. As he enters the big room, this is where he encounters his very first creature, known as the Construct. Once Simon escapes the Construct, he heads up to an area where he's in a room with many things around him. In my gameplay, Simon heads down the first hall, and on the floor he sees Carl Simpkin dead. This is where he would see his first dead body. He then heads down a little bit further and gets codes for both computers that he saw earlier, where he can put the codes in, and this is where he discovers how to go up. He basically needs to find power to allow him to get to the dome ceiling. So he heads into the other room where he was hearing someone, but he kind of ignored it. And this is where Simon first interacts with a quote-unquote sentient robot.
No, actually.
Well, thanks for being so helpful. It's not like I'm knocked out on the floor or anything.
Are you human?
Shit, did my body give it away? I try hard staying a mystery. Yeah, I'm human. Are you?
My name is Simon. Do you know anything about this place?
Oh, you knew. That makes this slightly less weird. Look, I'm obviously hurt. If you see anyone else around, just tell them where I am.
So, where are you, exactly?
Are you for real? I'm right here. See me waiting? Look at my hands. Hey, buddy!
Okay, I'm just gonna be... I'm not seeing it. I see a machine, a robot talking.
What the hell are you looking at? I'm here! See?
Okay. I just didn't expect you to look like that.
You're really hung up on appearances, you know that?
How did you...
After Simon talks to him, it's discovered that the robot really thinks it is Carl Simpkin and not the robot Simon sees. Simon still can't understand why this clearly robot thinks it is human, but tries to turn on the power from the switch. However, when he does, Robot Carl screams in pain. Simon turns it back and apologizes and tries to help, before Carl yells at him again. Simon then realizes that he saw another room down the hall, where he turns on the power there, but then discovers that the construct has come up when Simon had done that. Simon maneuvers around the creature and stealthily makes his way past it into the room with the dome ceiling. Simon makes his way into the room and finds a whiteboard with a map and a bunch of documents around it. Something about an impact, but Simon has no idea what it is talking about. He then finds the computer and connects again with Catherine.
Oh, that's better. Simon, was it?
Jarrett, Simon Jarrett.
Hi, Simon. I'm Catherine. Have you figured out what's going on yet?
Me? I was hoping you'd have some answers.
I probably have some. What do you want to know?
Where to even begin? I mean, what is this place? How did I get here? And why do the robots talk like they're people?
Well, you're at Upsilon, clearly. Have you never been there before? Where did you work?
The Grimoire in Toronto. Is that really important?
No, I mean, where did you work at Pathos 2?
I don't know what that is.
That's unexpected. Did you come directly from Toronto?
Yeah, I did. And it was very unexpected.
After Simon and Catherine spoke, Simon finds himself in a room that's about to collapse, but it eventually does. However, instead of dying, Simon wakes up and sees that his arms are different, and he is very confused, mad, and overall worried on what on earth is happening to him. He then climbs out into the ocean and walks to try and find the shuttle station to make his way to Catherine.
Well, thanks, little guy.
Once Simon gets into the shuttle station with the help of his new friend, he discovers that he actually has a flashlight, which just adds more to his confusion. He looks around and discovers a tablet that goes into the theory that an asteroid hit the Earth, killing everyone. Going down the tunnel, he also discovers someone named Amy.
Hey, are you...
Don't hurt me.
Can I help?
They won't let me die. Nothing is allowed to die.
What happened?
An accident. Fixing the power. I was going to Theta.
Anything I can do?
If you see Masters or Holland, tell them I need help. Okay? Amy needs help.
After Simon speaks to Amy and leaves her alive, although shutting off the safety features, he goes back to the shuttle to turn on the power and selects his destination to Lambda. A problem occurs though. On the way to Lambda, the shuttle crashes, and Simon has to escape. He then escapes the tunnel and begins his trek again to Lambda on foot.
I can find Lambda, right? I mean, really, how big can this ocean be?
Simon arrives at Lambda, but when he goes inside, he finds the place in ruins. However, as Simon explores, he soon realizes that something is very wrong. He hears disturbing noises and eventually comes across a terrifying enemy, a deformed WoW-infested human. This creature is blind but highly sensitive to sound, forcing Simon to stay quiet and move carefully to avoid detection. Eventually, Simon locates Catherine, but instead of a living person, he finds her brain scan stored inside a computer, existing only as an AI. Catherine realizes that Simon is completely lost, and she quickly gets to work helping Simon to understand what's happening. She explains the nature of Simon's current existence and introduces the idea of the Ark, a digital world where human consciousnesses could survive. After they discussed it, they went to go out and try to find a vessel called the Curie, where Simon can use that to get another escape vessel to hopefully make their way to Theta. Upon reaching the wreck of the Curie vessel, Simon enters the ship as an alternate route to Theta, only to find it in complete ruin, corrupted by the WoW's influence. As he navigates its dark, waterlogged corridors, he soon encounters the Flesher, a grotesque, mutated human that moves erratically and aggressively hunts him. Unlike previous enemies, this creature can see and react to Simon directly, making stealth and careful movement essential. As Simon works to restore power and reach the escape pod, he finds the room where there are tentacles all around him. After some consideration, Simon takes out the tentacles, but then is blasted back and is chased by the Flesher back to the escape vessel where Simon and Catherine escape the blast radius of the Curie. This is where Simon is told about the AI unit, the WoW. Due to the blast of the ship, Catherine almost loses control and just barely makes the landing before the vessel will have dropped into the abyss.
Please remain seated.
I'll never get this open. I didn't expect to see you again. Don't worry, Kath. I'll find a way to Theta.
Simon then walks around before looking up and seeing that he has arrived at Delta. Upon arrival, Simon finds robotic workers who believe they're still human, highlighting the strangeness that these robots believe they're human and they even think they're on the Ark when they clearly aren't. Exploring Delta, Simon finds a control room with records of Acre's descent into madness, detailing how he consumed WoW's structure gel and became something inhuman. Through the logs, we learn that Acres left for Theta aboard a Zeppelin transport, forcing Simon to call another Zeppelin to continue his journey. Once activated, Catherine tells him that the chip is bust and Simon needs to go get a new one by knocking out one of the robots. He either has a chance to knock out his friend K8 or the worker robot. Simon, after gaining a bond with K8, destroys the other robot, still feeling pretty bad about it. When he looks at K8, it is obvious that K8 is actually scared of Simon now. And then Simon is forced to leave him as he puts the new chip in the Omni tool, and he and Catherine head off. As they drift towards Theta, Simon reflects on this situation, struggling to understand what has happened to him. Catherine explains more about the brain scans, revealing that the Simon from Toronto is just a digital copy, meaning the original Simon is long dead. This realization unsettles Simon, making him question whether he is truly himself or just an imitation. Catherine also discusses the fact that the reason why Simon's brain didn't tell him earlier was because if it had, he would have most likely died due to the amount of stress of the situation he was in. Like, put yourself in Simon's shoes. If you suddenly woke up in a weird place, found out you were a robot in the future, and everyone was either dead or a robot, how would you react? The thing is, you probably wouldn't be able to because of all that was going on. That is why Simon's brain showed him everything over time and didn't overload him. Once Simon and Catherine arrive at Theta, Simon heads inside where he plugs Catherine in and they find the Dunbat. However, it's under quarantine. It's discovered that they need a security cipher from a personnel who may know it. After some searching around the labs and the quarters of the people who live there, Simon finds out he needs to go into the basement to reset the power so that all the systems can be accessed upstairs. Down there, Simon encounters another proxy. It is blind, but has incredible hearing. After going around it, Simon resets the breaker and heads back upstairs, where he goes back to the labs and collects 2 connections. One of them is data, has data on it from people who took their brain scans, and the one is made for environments. In the area where Simon uploads the environments, it is discovered that people were actually killing themselves after their scan to hopefully make it onto the Ark. That way, instead of their scan making it, they would make it. However, that's not how it works. After Simon gets them loaded, Simon finds out Brandon Wan may have a security cipher, but he won't give it. So, in a disturbing part of the game, Simon and Catherine rummage through Brandon's room and find out about Alice Coster, who Catherine impersonates to trick Brandon into giving the codes. Simon is given the choice to either shut it down or erase the data. Simon decides to shut it down instead and puts everything back. They then use the security cipher to get into the dumbat room. But as Simon tries to turn it on, it comes alive and becomes very disoriented, yelling and eventually crashing through, knocking Simon out for a bit. Simon then gets up and goes to a nearby staircase to a vent and crawls inside, making his way through the facility. Simon eventually makes his way through the vents and enters a room with a lot of things going on inside of it. Simon then plugs Catherine into a new terminal where she finds out about the dumbat, and this is where they also find the prototype Ark. After some thinking, she suggests an other way to gain down into the abyss, using a diving suit, located at Omicron. So after they decide what to do next, Catherine gives Simon access to the room where he can mess around with the prototype Ark so that Catherine can get a better understanding about it. In the same room is a giant machine that can be used to identify what exactly is Simon. After Catherine does a scan, it's discovered that his body has a cortex chip, structure gel binding it to the suit, which inside has a dead body of Imogen Reed, someone who is nice to Catherine. After she finds this out, she says that they can start to head out now, that Catherine knows more about Simon. She's able to figure out how to get them on to the Ark. They then head out of the room, and Simon takes Catherine, and when he leaves, he finds himself in a big open area where he sees that an elevator across the hall, but it's bust because of Brandon. He did that to help others survive, although it was all in vain. He then finds Brandon and needs to take the chip he has. The problem is he isn't alone in there. In the area is Terry Akers, who looks nothing like human anymore. The only possible resembling of a human is the shape, and even then that's a stretch. Simon gets around Akers and unlocks the room Brandon is in and takes the chip. This is where Simon is able to update the security cipher, take it back to the elevator, and just barely make it inside before Akers comes running at him, smashing the elevator doors. The elevator soon shuts down, and Simon is forced to use the escape hatch below to get away. This breaks on him, and he falls all the way down to the bottom of the shaft. When he awakens, he gets up and comes back out, where he goes into a hallway and opens a door, where from afar he sees a staircase. When he gets close, he hears a scream and starts to go back from where he came from. But it doesn't take long for Terry to catch up to him, lift him up, before it goes dark. Then Simon wakes up to being back in his apartment, and across from him is Ashley. They talk for a little bit, explaining their chemistry when Simon wakes up to see that Terry put him in the fleshy wall substance that could possibly be a part of a hive mind. I'm not entirely sure. Simon is then forced to go through many areas where the same proxy follows him around, forcing him to make maneuvers around it, before he is finally away from it and enters a big room with a lot of water filling it. Simon then parkours his way to the exit, where he goes to the end of the tunnel, and in the room, he finds a switch that reads emergency flush. Simon pulls the switch where the door opens and he hears the creature again, but before it can reach him, a rush of water throws Simon all around until he is outside of Theta. When Simon escapes Theta, he starts his trek to Omicron. On his way to the place, Simon goes through a field of giant sphere things that appear to look like they're supposed to do something. However, they aren't powered. Simon then walks up to Omicron, but he finds it in lockdown. Simon then goes to an off-site building where he hopes to find a way to lift the lockdown. Simon then enters and drains the room manually before going into the room where he can plug Catherine in. Catherine explains that her view is very limited due to the heavy security over Omicron. She then tells him to look around, where they start talking while Simon figures out a puzzle to turn Omicron back on. Once he finished it, the terminals turn on. Simon has a look, but the only way to override the lockdown is with a code. Simon then checks the other terminal where it mysteriously appears. Simon then takes that code and disables the lockdown. He even remarks how it feels like they got lured into the back of a van, explaining that something wants them to go in for some reason. Simon then takes Catherine out, and Simon exits the offsite building and tries to go through the main door, but there's something wrong where he can't do. So he is forced to go around the back using some scaffolding to help him get across the other door, where Simon enters, and after the room drains, he's inside Omicron. As soon as Simon is inside Omicron, he looks upon the dead body of two people without their heads on the floor in front of him. Wonderful. He tries to go further, but all the ways are locked, so Simon goes up the stairs where he meets a creature that talks to him. It's later discovered that Simon was talking to someone named Dr. Ross, a former scientist. Simon then makes his way into a room and walks down the hallway where he can plug Catherine in again. And after they do some talking, they discover that it's actually a dive suit room, and this is where Simon will get into his deep dive suit. After some time, it's discovered that there is a dive suit, but it has a dead body inside, which sounds like it's bad, but in this situation, it's actually pretty good because they instead could just use another copy of Simon. All they need is structure gel, a battery pack, and a Cortex chip. In fact, if you think about it, they're extremely lucky because they already had a suit with a dead body inside of it. So they can slap everything together and it will work out. Simon agrees and goes out to get everything on the shopping list.
So we need a Cortex chip, structure gel, and a battery pack. That's one hell of a shopping list.
Thanks. I'll just hang around here if that's okay.
I'll be back.
After leaving the room, Simon heads to the main room where he needs to fix the fault to bring power back up. After Simon figures this out, everything around him lights up, and Ross appears again. Simon then heads forward by collecting the first thing on the list, structure gel, in the lab on the floor that he is on. Simon goes in the lab, and when he tries to take out, the chip breaks, so he needs to find a way to fix it. He discovers that there is a structure gel injecting machine, and he goes and puts the structure gel on the chip. This is where Simon really gets to see how this stuff works, because as soon as he puts the chip back in, it ends up working, and he takes the structure gel. Then Simon heads downstairs to collect the Cortex chip. He finds a robot on the table, and after aligning the motions on the chip, the Cortex chip is ejected, and Simon can take it out. Then for the final thing, Simon heads upstairs to hopefully get a battery pack. This is where he meets a new creature called Robot Head. He finds out it is very sensitive to noise, so he must be very quiet. After Simon narrowly escapes the creature, he heads back downstairs, where the glass of the room explodes and the power goes dark again. It's then realized that the creature is now downstairs, and Simon needs to make his way past it. A quarter of the way down the hall, Simon is chased by it and runs into the room with Catherine and tells her to shut and lock the door. Now, Simon can get to work.
Lock the door!
It's locked! What's going on?
I managed to piss off another one of WoW's monsters.
We have everything we need, right?
Yeah. Let's get to work.
Simon starts putting everything together on the suit by adding everything he's gotten around the facility. Once it's done, Catherine and Simon talk and explain that if Simon didn't want to do it, she would, because she really wanted to launch the Ark. Simon then agrees, and she tells him to calibrate the pilot seat in the other room. And after he does that, he is asked to sit down. And after they talk for a little bit, the screen flickers and a bright light appears. From this moment, I will be saying Simon for Simon 3, and will tell you when I will talk about a previous Simon, as in Simon 1 or Simon 2. At this point, we are looking through the eyes of the new Simon. But then we hear this.
There must be something wrong. Can't you run a diagnosis or something?
So, to stray away from the story a little bit, because this part is a little confusing, this is where we get a full explanation on what exactly is happening. The way that everyone on Pathos 2 and Simon thinks it works is like a brain transplant or a coin flip, whether or not he continues in the same body or he moves on in the new one. But this isn't the case at all. It isn't cut and paste, it's copy and paste. You never leave your own body. If you go in for a scan expecting to transfer over, you won't. If the camera didn't switch to Simon 3, we would still see everything as Simon 2. There is no such thing as a coin flip. The reason why Simon 3 thinks he won is because for him, it was a direct continuation, when in reality, he was technically born just a few seconds ago. I hope you understand this, so back to the story. After talking for a little, Simon gets frustrated with Catherine as she tries to rationalize it, telling him that this was always the case with brain scans. But Simon is furious, feeling deceived. He yells at Catherine, making her quiet, as Simon curses her out. Catherine then gives him the ability to turn off life support for the Simon, and she disconnects. He's now faced with the brutal choice to either leave his old self behind, waking up alone and confused, or shut him down permanently. Simon ultimately leaves him, hoping there would be a use for him in the future. Simon then goes to the climber, and after plugging Catherine in, they begin their descent. Simon tries to talk to Catherine, but she's worried and doesn't want to make him mad. They then talk about everything that was going on around him, and at some point through the trip, something drops onto the cage. And it was Ross.
You did it! You did it! I will make preparations.
Simon then wakes back up as they approach the Omega Sector. The Omega Sector is something that spans across the entire abyssal plane. So Simon must make the trek to Tau from the climber to get the Ark. On his way, he encounters many creatures down there and even sees Ross a few times. There is even a moment where he gets a new robot friend. However, this robot is soon taken by one of the many terrifying creatures. After Simon makes his way through the tunnels and past everything, he reaches Site Tau. He finally makes it inside the facility where the Ark is supposed to be. However, the station is in complete ruin, and with most of the staff either dead or transformed by WoW. After exploring a little, he finds another proxy trying to kill him. He makes his way around him, going through another secure door before climbing to the main quarters of Tau. As Simon explores, he hears Ross telling him to move on, but Simon ignores him so that he can continue to explore and understand what happened there. Simon checks all the quarters, either seeing living/human WoW hybrids or the humans just dead. Simon then is able to access a room that was locked, and once inside, he discovers the Ark, but he also finds Sarah Lindwall.
Sarah Lindwall, payload technician at your service. A rare sight, am I right?
I'd say so. You're the first normal living human I've seen.
There's not many left down here. Most of them are up on the plateau.
You mean at Omicron?
Yeah.
There's no one alive at Omicron.
You've been there?
I've been all over. The power plant at Upsilon, the ruins of Lambda, the abandoned Delta, Theta.
You've been to Theta?
There's not a lot left of Pathos 2.
And, I'm the only living person you've met? You mean I'm the last living human on the planet?
I'm sorry.
Who are you again?
Simon Jarrett.
Stationed out?
Nowhere. I used to work in a bookshop in Toronto. Long story.
Then what the hell are you doing here?
I'm trying to find the Ark.
Why would you? How do you know about that?
I've heard it's the last hope for mankind.
Damn right it is. Now what do you want with it?
Take it to the Gun at Phi. Launch it into space.
That was the plan, all right. I've been guarding it ever since we brought it back to Tau. Just couldn't bring myself to let go. To tell you the truth, have the strength to argue. And I certainly don't have the time to wait for the next sentient thing shuffling through here. Go ahead. Take it.
Thank you. Can I get you anything? Do anything for you?
You could kill me.
Good one.
Please, don't leave me like this. I'm the last one. It's crazy.
Are you serious about me killing you?
No, I'd love to hang around here until I dry up to the size of a raisin. Simon, this fucking sucks. I don't want to live like this.
Shouldn't we be doing something to keep you alive?
Why?
You're the last human. I just find it disrespectful to our entire history not to fight this. Sure, we have the Ark, but you're the real deal.
Thanks. That's probably the best compliment I've ever got. But the truth is that the Ark is all we have. We'll have to accept second best, you know.
None of this feels right.
Simon, I want to die.
Sarah.
Just think about it.
Knock it out of the park. I'm glad you came by. Good to get this over with. Would you stay with me, please? It won't be long now. Please, just stay. What a crazy thing this was. Life. At least I won't have to turn 30. Hooray! Wish I could have died at home with my friends. You ever been to Greenland? It's very beautiful. Well, at least when you get out of the city. Nanook is busy, and yes, there's like 12 million people trying to get around, but it's a great place. Or rather, it was a great place before the comet ended it all. You know what? I prefer it this way. I liked Pathos. Liked my colleagues. Ian, Nick, Jasper, even Catherine. People thought she was weird because she was quiet, but she was cool.
Simon, you still there?
I'm here, Sarah.
Don't let him die, okay? Send them out there. To the stars.
After talking, Simon sends the Ark down to the lower levels, and for Sarah, he turns off her life support and stays with her in the final moments. Even though Sarah was the last human, she was in pain and wanted to be free. So after trying to get her to change her mind, Simon agreed, and then she passed away. Simon then goes to the lower quarters of the area where he can get the Ark on a transport to Phi. The problem is, the track to Phi is getting blocked, and soon he's no longer able to follow the Ark. He then finds a tunnel and crawls through. After walking around in the tunnel for a little, Ross introduces Simon to Site Alpha, the place where everything went wrong with the WoW. Ross then talks to Simon, and Simon tells him to tell him what he wants. Simon then opens a door and walks into the room with the heart of the WoW.
How?
It's enslaved protein sloshing around your suit is the noose from which the WoW will hang itself.
What are you talking about?
As soon as I came to Omicron, I tried to tell them to make the toxin that would make the WoW wither, but they didn't understand. They put it inside a cabinet. This is so infuriating. They needed to take it to Alpha, the fountainhead of the misery we created. And then the girl, she figured it out. She was going to take care of it, but the WoW shrieked. They all died. You took the gel from the cabinet and made yourself into a venomous snake.
You're saying this toxin inside of me can kill the WoW altogether?
You are the snake, Simon. Now strike at the heart.
What the hell is that?
The heart. It controls all the structure gel on Pathos 2. All you need to do is poison the imprint, and the heart will unwillingly spread it across Pathos 2, killing it. Feed it, Simon. Push your arm into the heart.
Simon takes time to think about it, and he isn't sure what to do. As he's contemplating, Ross keeps telling Simon to do it, and every time, Simon tells him to back off. Simon thinks about it for a while, understanding that sure, the WoW has done a lot of wrong, but it was only doing what it thought was right. It wasn't trying to do anything wrong, and if everything else on Earth was truly gone, then maybe leaving the WoW wouldn't be a terrible idea, and maybe it could see what it would have for the Earth to possibly even help it. After careful consideration, Simon decides he doesn't want to poison it. He then leaves as Ross begs him to do it. Then, Ross ambushes him and tells Simon he will force him to do it. Ross then knocks him out and then tries to talk to Simon to get him to do it. During his talk, one of the creatures comes out of the ground and eats Ross. Simon then escapes and sees the creature is following him. Simon rushes out and makes his way to Phi, on his way dealing with the creatures until he finally makes it to Phi's front doors, making his way inside to the final step of his journey. Once inside Phi, Simon plugs Catherine in and she tells him to explore the area to try and find the Ark. Simon also explains what happened at Site Tau. As Simon makes his way through the facility, he walks into a room with a bullet casing and the sight of Catherine, deceased on the floor.
Are you suggesting we keep it down here? Doesn't that defeat the whole purpose? Eternity among the stars, remember?
The people inside the Ark won't know the difference. We can just keep it down here, and we don't have to risk the Ark being shot through 5,000 meters of broken barrel, and then push through another 100,000 meters of a dust-filled atmosphere.
Will the casing stand all that pressure?
Well, the odds aren't great.
Catherine, say something.
I don't care what you think. I'm launching it.
No need to be like that. Let's just hang on to it for a while and think about it. We can launch it later.
No, that wasn't the deal. We made it to save them. To launch it. Out there, it's hope. Down here, it's a fucking terrarium waiting to die with the rest of us.
Come on, Catherine, it's not asking much. Let's just think about it before we risk the only hope humanity has to survive this hell.
No, we launch it today. This is my project, my Ark.
It's bigger than that. Don't you get it? It's not for you to decide. We're talking about the fate of mankind.
Get away from the Ark! I'm taking it.
No, you're not.
I'm not gonna let you ruin this!
Stop it!
Guys, calm down!
Get away from me! No!
What did you do?
It was an accident.
Catherine, talk to me. Catherine.
Oh, God. Catherine.
Simon tells Catherine about what happened, and after they talk for a little bit, Simon gets the battery pack needed to access the room to get to the Ark. Then, he places the Ark inside the bullet casing. Simon and Catherine talk about if it's worth it, and Catherine says that at this point, it doesn't matter, because humanity will have a much better chance out there among the stars than down here on Earth. The bullet is then loaded, and Simon heads back over to Catherine, where they talk how they will get themselves on the Ark. Catherine explains that it is a pilot seat used to operate the gun, so after deciding, Simon picks up the Omni tool and goes back outside to the gun. When Simon plugs Catherine into the console for the final time, preparing to launch the Ark into space, the moment seems triumphant. Everything has led to this. With the Ark loaded into the launch platform, Catherine works to send it into orbit while Simon prepares for the final step, uploading their consciousnesses to the Ark, so they can survive in the digital utopia. The countdown begins, and Simon eagerly awaits his transfer, believing he will soon wake up inside the Ark.
It's an amazing thing you did. And I want you to know I appreciate it.
Time, 20 seconds.
What's the matter with the upload?
Just give it a second.
I thought you guys would have better bandwidth in the future.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6.
You gotta be kidding me!
4, 3,
Come on, load!
2.
Yes! Fuck yeah, we made it! Woo! I'm still here.
The upload completes, the Ark successfully launches, and Simon watches it escape into space, but then, nothing. He's sitting in the dark inside his mechanical body as the bottom of the ocean, confused and panicked. Simon demands to know why he's not inside the Ark. Catherine, exhausted and frustrated, reminds him that the process was a copy, not a transfer. His mind was uploaded, but this Simon was always going to stay behind. Realizing he has once again been left behind while another version of him moves on, Simon lashes out in a furious breakdown. However, before they can continue arguing, Catherine's systems overload and shuts down, leaving Simon completely alone in the ruins of the underwater station. He calls out to Catherine, hoping she would respond, as he plunged into darkness.
Please don't leave me alone. Catherine? Catherine?
This isn't over just yet. After the credits, we hear Simon 3 yell what he did, and a second later, we look through the eyes of Simon 4, the one that made it onto the Ark. He walks around a little, astonished that he made it, and enjoying the beautiful environment around him. As Simon looks around, he sees Catherine, who also successfully transferred. She welcomes him, confirming that they made it, and their consciousnesses are now safe in this virtual paradise, floating in space. The tension and horror of the ocean depths are gone, replaced with a serene and hopeful atmosphere. The game ends with Simon standing in awe, taking in the artificial but beautiful new world as the Ark drifts through space, ensuring that a version of humanity survives, even if the real Earth is doomed.